Hey everybody, it's Tommy Canale and welcome back to Before the Lights podcast, the show to find out how those in sports, music, and entertainment made their mark. Go get a coffee or grab a drink. Today, we have a one-of-a-kind musician. He was the creator, frontman, guitarist of Blackfoot. He's also a drummer, a Native American, a songwriter, a high-energy performer, and a producer. He's an icon of rock and roll. A member of Lynyrd Skynyrd, which has sold close to 40 million albums worldwide. Please welcome to the show, Rickey Medlocke. Rickey, welcome to Before the Lights.
I am very happy to be here. I'm sitting under a beautiful shady elm tree with a glass of iced tea in a mason jar, and everything is beautiful down south.
I love it. I love it. You were born in Jacksonville, Florida, and raised by your grandparents. Your grandfather was Shorty Medlocke, who was a bluegrass musician and taught you the banjo at age 3. Rickey, looking back, how much did learning the banjo at age 3 help your career?
Well, I think that it conditioned my hands to quite a lot of it, to quite an extent. I believe that learning at such a young age, especially, when your hands are still developing, I had he bought me a miniature 5-string banjo. And at that time, growing up, he saw that I was very, very interested in music. He was in and out of bands on the road with some really great artists out of Nashville. And he was also on a television show that originated out of Jacksonville on the TV station. And it was a guy by the name of Toby Dowdy. And Toby had the band. He was from Georgia. My dad would join him on the show when my dad was in town, not on the road, or when my dad didn't have other gigs going on or whatever. So my dad was on there for probably all of 5 years. Well, one day on one of those shows, my granddaddy went to him and said, "Hey, look, Toby," he said, "I've been teaching my grandson the banjo, and he's learned a song with me. And I'd like to bring him on the TV on the show. And here's a grandfather and a grandson doing a song together, him on a miniature banjo and me on the regular banjo. What would you think about that?" And Toby at the time said, "You know what? I'd take a shot on that. I'd be willing to let that happen." So he brought me on the show. We did our number, and the fan mail of the show was so overwhelming and so much that everybody thought that it was a really cool, thing for a parent to do, to include his grandson. And I stayed on the show off and on with him for the 5 years.
Wow.
And it was a pretty, I got to tell you, at a young age, man, you're like, yeah. You're like, what's going on with me right now? Because, Toby would bring on these guest stars that were real popular at the time. Back then, there was people coming on there like this guy named Johnny Tillotson that ended up in Vegas having a big show in Vegas. But on the other side, he would bring on actors and actresses. And while I was on the show, one night on a Saturday, he had the original Lassie on there. And I got to stand there and pet the original Lassie that you saw come on the show in the 50s, Next time around, he had Roy Rogers with Trigger on there. And but Roy Rogers wouldn't let me sit on the horse, and it kind of bummed me out as a kid,
Sure.
But the real cool one, man, who was my hero. He had the original Lone Ranger with Clayton Moore come on the show. And here's the Lone Ranger with Silver. And he let me sit on the horse. He let me sit on Silver and he pulled me around the parking lot for a little bit with me sitting on him. And at the very end of it, he reached down in his gun belt and popped a silver bullet out and gave it to me.
Wow. And
I still have it. I still have it somewhere at my house. I'm not sure quite where it is, but I'm sure I'll run across it one day or, but it was things like that that just really, inspired me. My dad, my grandfather, I call him my dad, but he was really my grandfather, but my grandparents raised me. So they became my parents,
Mm-hmm.
But my dad, ended up having bands in and around him all the time in the home. They'd rehearse at the house, and I'd watch all these great musicians. And I got inspired to play the guitar because he had such good guitar players with him all the time. And my grandfather himself was an incredible guitar player, especially acoustic,
Mm-hmm.
But what was so cool was I got inspired to learn the guitar. And he sat me down and he showed me 3 chords. He said, okay, here's G, C, and D. And when I'd learned those, I was learning on his old early 1940s to mid 40s J45 Gibson acoustic. And at the time, it just seemed so big to me. Well, I still have it. And my gal, she loves to play it. She keeps it with her all the time because she said every time she picks it up, she writes a song. But I learned on that. And what was weird was I started playing it left-handed, the opposite way. And because he had a guitar player named Dean O'Neill, that he played the guitar left-handed with the strings upside down. Well, I started learning that way. And I got really intimidated by watching other guitar players play, the opposite way, strung right and everything. So I end up switching it around and ended up learning to play it the right way,
Mm-hmm.
The real cool thing was that, everybody's always asked me, who my biggest and my most major influence in my life was as far as music. And I always have to say, my grandfather. I mean, he played all these different instruments. And not only did he play them, but he played them great. And that was just amazing to me. And I wanted to be like that. So I learned how to play banjo, and I learned how to play guitar, and I learned how to play drums, and I learned how to play bass, and I learned a little bit of keyboards. And, I started doing, and he sat me down one day. He said, now, the music you're trying to learn and you're getting into, you don't need to learn all these instruments. He said, don't be like me. You do your own thing. You be like you, stick to one thing, 1 or 2 things, and excel in them and be great, So actually I stuck to guitar and drums. And that's how I got the gig with Lynyrd Skynyrd the first time around, was that I was a drummer.
Mm-hmm.
And they needed a drummer. As their drummer was quitting, Bob was quitting the band. And I just happened to call Alan Collins, who put me on to Ronnie. And Ronnie says, Bob's quitting, and we're getting ready to start recording our first record in Muscle Shoals, Alabama in 2 weeks, and we need a drummer. I said, look no further, man. I'm your man, And I went down to Jacksonville. I was living in New Jersey at the time. And I was kind of discontent with the way the band Blackfoot was going at the time. And I said, it just ain't making it for me. And I was really restless. So I took the job with Lynyrd Skynyrd, flew down to Jacksonville, landed, went by my parents' house, dropped my bags off. Ronnie and Gary and Alan visited, visited with my old man at the time. And Ronnie just loved to go by my parents' house and my old man play the blues. Because my old man was more of a Mississippi Delta blues player than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And Ronnie used to just love to come by there and listen to him play. And it was so cool, man. We left the house that afternoon after I'd flown in, drove out to Green Cove Springs, and I sat down on a set of drums that Bob had just kind of like left. I sat down on them, adjusted them, and we went to working up what would later become Lynyrd Skynyrd's first and last record and/or the Muscle Shoals sessions. And I contributed songwriting to that, not only the drums, but lead vocals, background vocals, some acoustic guitar, kind of
a whole thing.
I was kind of the chief cook and bottle washer on that,
You have embraced your Native American heritage, which I think is fantastic. And we could talk about this for hours, but I want to bring the tattoos on the arms right there, Indian and Sioux. I want to bring some awareness to my folks. I'm going to put links in the show notes. People, I want you to understand something. 1 in 3 Native Americans live in poverty and only earn about $23,000 a year. Only 17% of Native American students are going to college, and 84% of Native women have experienced violence in their lifetime, and women and girls are murdered at a 10 times higher rate than any other ethnicity. So this needs to be brought to the forefront. I'm going to put links to the National Indian Education Association and the Native Women's Wilderness Foundation as well, for people to reach out and try and help these organizations. This has been going on for a long time. It goes all the way, way back. But Johnny Cash released a vinyl called Bitter Tears, the Ballads of American Indian Songs about harsh and unfair treatment of indigenous people. I actually have the vinyl to it. But Rickey, my question is, how do we pay the respect that's deserved to the Native American heritage?
And without sounding bitter about a lot of stuff,
mm-hmm.
I think that what has happened in this country is that Native people have been the one ethnic group that everything, the atrocities, the genocide, everything that has happened to them has been swept under the rug. I don't particularly like politics.
Me neither.
I'm a guy that looks at our world, and there's one thing that you should never do with a Native, and that's discuss religion and politics. Never discuss that, because our religion, when the Europeans first come over here, we were labeled as we had pagan religions, and we were labeled as savages. It's written in the Constitution, and it labels us as savages in the Constitution. I myself love to talk about this and love to speak about this. You are right about, number one, the poverty rate. That is true. Number two, let's talk about how many Native women, girls, small children have disappeared, been found murdered, been found, that are, have violence committed toward them. Yes, at an alarming rate. And guess what? You never hear about it on the mainstream media. Not a word. But you know what they'll do? They'll take all this other stuff and they'll go out there day after day, and they talk about everything else that's going on bad in this country. But with natives, you'll never hear a word about it. Nothing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I could sit here all day long and we could blame this person and blame that person and, you know, go through the whole bit, okay? Really what it really comes down to, let's go back to Andrew Jackson, okay? Andrew Jackson, he's the one that created the Native American Removal Act that removed all these natives from North Carolina, South Carolina, into Georgia, Tennessee, you know, Alabama. He removed all these natives. Why? Because he wanted to have all that land to give to his buddies to sell, to make big money. So what did they do? They created the Native American Removal Act and created the Trail of Tears all the way to Oklahoma, where hundreds and hundreds died along the way. But you know what? They don't teach that in school.
No, they don't.
They don't teach that in history class. They didn't when I was a young man. And I got to tell you something. I got suspended from school. Why? Because I stood up in class and I said, whoa, wait a minute. That's wrong. Teacher says to me, what do you mean that's wrong? I said, that's not the way it happened. He said, what, did you write the history book? I went, no, white man wrote that history book. I said, you left out a big part of it. He goes, you sit down or you can go down to the principal. I got angry enough to where I picked up my desk and throwed it out through the window, busted glass all over the place. I went home, suspended. Okay. Well, the history books leave out a lot of it. Okay. And I saw a Native American comedian one time said, big quote from him. You didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us. So the deal is, when you look at what's going on with natives right now, right at this very moment, everybody looks at it and goes, oh, those natives are all right, man. They got casinos. They ain't got nothing to worry about. Really? Not every native reservation has a casino.
That's correct.
And a lot of the casinos, a lot of the reservations that have casinos, they try to help. But guess what? You got the Bureau of Indian Affairs in Washington that's been sitting there for years, taking in all this money. Where's all that money going? I know where it goes. Politician's pocket, 10% of it goes to the natives. You know what I mean? Am I radical about it? You know, am I radical about it? Damn right I'm radical about it. You know, because look, I know there's other things that's been committed to other ethnic groups. I get it. I see it. I know. Okay. But let me tell you what, in the very beginning, even before Christopher Columbus got here, the Vikings got here before he did and found Native Americans. Okay. Christopher Columbus got here. And what does he do? He creates atrocities, takes them as slaves, and takes them back to Spain and England for them to serve them over there. It's not hard to figure out why a lot of natives are angry out of the goodness of the government's heart. Oh my God, what do? They give us, they give us land that we can live on. You know, here's your little bit of land. You go out there and you just be quiet. You know, well, times have gotten to the point where a lot of natives are not quiet anymore. You know, it's gotten to the point now to where I got cousins, I got best friends on reservations. I got all these people that I know on the res. And you know what? They're sick of it. They're tired of it, you know, and they don't want to hear, they don't want to hear people go, oh, you got the casino. You don't need us. You know, you don't need no money. It's not about the money. It's about what's right is right. You know what I mean?
Agree.
That's all.
Yep.
So, yes, I speak out about native situations. I'm native, and I love my heritage. I love where I came from. Yes, I got some white in me, of course. from my grandfather's side, but most Native American. My blood runs thick, and I'm proud of it, and I'll always speak up for them. And what I love, man, I go to play in Lynyrd Skynyrd, man, and I got all these natives that will come out, man, and they thank me a lot of times for speaking up, like on this platform that you got going. I would like to see everybody do good, and everybody just, be on a level playing ground, and let's all, try to get along here together. Martin Luther King, man, God rest his soul, for whatever he was or he wasn't, he spoke a good turn. He spoke a good word, and now I believe that word has been forgotten. You know what I mean? It's almost like, have y'all forgot what he said? Let's all get along here.
Yep. I agree with you. And I think there needs to be a Native American Renaissance fair that's done every year. That's educational purposes, that can raise some funds, that doesn't go to the White House, that goes directly to the reservations that need it, and bring awareness. The world did a great job of educating people to say no to drugs. And whenever they put down the foot to get word out, they do. The same thing can be done here to educate people about these people living in poverty and these women that are showing up murdered. It can be done, people. Check out the episode links, because Rickey and I could sit here for 2 hours plus talking about what can be done and what should be done, but something definitely needs to be done. I agree with you.
Well, if I looked at you and I said, hey, can you tell me, do you know when Native American month is? What would you look at me and tell me?
November.
There you go. You're a good man. You're up on it. But I guarantee you, the major percentage of this country don't even know that exists.
No. Agree.
So me and my brothers and sisters, that I was in touch with, we just celebrated June 25th, Custer's demise. We celebrated it. We raised a glass, a cheer to it. It was a good day to die on that day. There you go.
Rickey, everybody's heard about the tragic plane crash that took Ronnie and other band members. It's been talked about 100 times. A couple questions I have on and that I'm curious in. Did Ronnie really keep telling people that he didn't think he'd ever see the age of 30 when he passed away at 29? And was he calling himself the Mississippi Man close before that plane crash actually went down in Mississippi?
I've heard, I've been close, I've been back close to Gary for over 25 years now, and I've never really gotten into any kind of intimate discussions with him. I do know, and I can tell you that from what I understand, people were scared to get on that plane in Greenville. They were frightened of it. They knew there was something wrong. They had ordered buses to meet him in Baton Rouge. And I guess from what I understand, the way the story went, Ronnie, basically, said, well, if it's your time to go, it's your time to go,
Wow.
And he always said he wouldn't live past 30. And, he was also, a lot of people say he was known as the Mississippi Kid and, all that kind of stuff, I got to tell you, as the years go by, anything like that happens as the years go by, the story gets bigger and bigger. And it takes on its different, different little twists and turns. Okay. I have heard Gary's side of it. And I take Gary's side of it for gospel. That boy, I'm going to tell you something, man. That boy went through an unbelievable in his life. And, back then, man, when I guess what they should have done, and I have said this to him before, anybody that would survive anything like that once you healed up, you should have had some kind of, you know, psychiatric help, you know, to help you deal with, you know, the tragedy and, you know, but back then, man, they healed you up. They gave you some pain pills and they sent you on your way, you know? And, man, I, you know, it's what it comes down to in my own way. I keep my eye on Gary all the time when we're on stage or even off stage, you know, when I'm around him, because he's a brother and I feel for him. And, it's a weird deal, man, to have people come up to you and everybody, I understand, you know, they still want to go backwards. And to be honest with you, we've quit, you know, we've kind of stopped answering anything. We've kind of avoided, every time that date rolls around in October, we just don't even, you know, it's just another day now.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because, I don't want Gary to revisit that stuff, man. It was traumatic, you know, to him and to the others. So look at Johnny. Johnny lost his brother. So, you know what, man, we kind of protect ourselves from it. You know what I mean? And, I got to store my own version, you know, of it and stuff like that, because, shortly before they took that flight, I took my granddaddy over. I took Shorty over to see Ronnie and the guys. I'd already left the band, of course, and Artemis was playing with them. But we went over to their studio in Riverside, and, you know, Ronnie mentioned to me on the way out, hey, Rickey, we got our own plane. You know, we're going to be doing some Florida dates, and we're going up. He goes, why don't you come ride with us for a week? I thought it sounded like a great idea, but couple of days before it was to happen, I got shows with Blackfoot and I couldn't go. Well, otherwise, I'd have probably went right along with them, you know? Mm. Well, it was really interesting when I got back with Lynyrd Skynyrd, you know, in 96. We did our first European tour together. And I was up on the bus, double-decker bus, and sitting up in the front lounge with the big windows where we were looking out over London, and Gary was sitting next to me, and it was the oddest thing. He reached over because this was I think it was in the fall. It was in October and stuff like that. And Gary reached over and hit me on the arm and looked at me and said, where were you at? And I kind of looked at him and I went, what? He went, where were you on that day? And then I got what he was talking about. And I said, Gary, oddly enough, as fate would have it, I was right down the road from you guys. We played Columbia, South Carolina that night, the day you took off to go to Baton Rouge. I said, that's how close I was. So it's weird. I've always thought of that, you know? And I said, Gary, you know, I've often thought that if I'd have been there, maybe I could have said something or done something to change, you know, Ronnie's mind, or you guys looked at me, man, so honestly, and said, you know what? It wasn't meant for you to be there then. It was meant for you to be here now.
Great line.
So that's the last, pretty well much the last, you know, time we kind of talked about that kind of thing, you know? And here I am, man, over 25, going on 26 years now. I've been back with the band, you know?
Speaking of getting back with the band, when they decided to get back together, who reached out to you to ask you to come back? Was it Gary? Was it Judy, Ronnie's widow? Who reached out to you?
Well, it was kind of a cool deal. You know, my gal and I, we have another home down in Fort Myers, Florida. And I was in Fort Myers, and I got a call from Judy Van Zandt. And Judy said, we're doing a premiere of a movie called Freebird the Movie. with a jam session the night before, and we want you to come and be a part of it, since you were with the band for all those years, you know. And I was just really taken aback by it. I was like, wow. I said, Judy, I would love to do that. So I canceled a few gigs, you know, to be able to go and do it. So this was right after Christmas. And so what happened was my manager and I drove up to Atlanta, and we got there the day that they were going to have the All-Star Jam. So I got to the Fox Theater, and they were all coming in. And that's the first time I'd seen Gary, Billy, and Leon and Johnny in such a long time. And it was like seeing old brothers, you know, and the next thing you know, we're hugging, man, and how are you doing? And blah, 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 blah. It's so good to see you, you know, so forth and so on. Well, I jammed with them that night at the Fox, and my manager, manager at the time, and I went out and I jammed with the guys, and me and Johnny sang. I think we sang "I Ain't the One" together, and so they asked me to do a song by myself.
Mm.
They said, "Do you want to do a song, Ricky?" I said, "Sure." You know, I said, "Give me an acoustic guitar." So I took an acoustic guitar, and Charlie Daniels.
Oh, yeah.
Introduced, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from Blackfoot, and used to be with Lynyrd Skynyrd, Rickey Medlocke. And the whole place stood up, you know, and it really freaked me out, you know. Well, Gary and the guys were standing on the stage, at the side of the stage. And I went out and played Highway Song right by myself, acoustically. And my manager at the time, their manager looked over at my manager and said, "Hey, you know, Gary's talked for quite a while about getting Ricky back in the band, but the situation hasn't been right to do so. But right now could be the time, because they're getting ready to make a few changes and so forth and so on. And we need to talk later." Oh, okay. You know, my manager said that'd be great. Well, I came off the stage, and the guys, you know, shook my hand, hugged me, you know, and blah, blah, blah. So the next day was a autograph signing session day at Hard Rock. They wanted me to join in with them to do that, and I went with them, sat next to Gary. So we did the premiere, after show party, and the next day I left. And Gary said, "I'll call you soon." Oh, okay. So January rolls around, February rolls around. I hadn't heard from nobody. All of a sudden, I'm at my studio there in Fort Myers, Florida, that we had built. And you know, the old tape machines,
Oh, yeah.
that you used to have, you know, that would record your voice, you know. Well, I called to check my messages, and I called to check them, and all of a sudden I get this recording, and it's Gary. And he said, "Hey, brother Ricky, it's Gary. I want you to learn I Ain't the One Saturday night, That Smell, and Freebird, all of Alan's parts. And I'm going to come down to Fort Myers and audition you. And if you pass the audition, I'll give you $1.50 in a Snickers bar." And I went, $1.50 in a Snickers bar? You know, so he came down with an entourage of people. And I was sitting there with my old reverse body fire CD player there with the CD in, and my little amp plugged in, you know, and I hit the play, and I started playing along with "I Ain't the One." just all of Alan's parts. I played right through the lead, note for note. Right as we go back into it, before it goes back into the verse, he reached over and cut it off. I went, uh-oh, you know. He looked at me, goes, you want to do this? And I went, damn right I want to do it. He goes, let's go call Johnny. So we went and called Johnny. Johnny gets on the phone, and Johnny says, you know, you've been a lead singer, a front man. You're a great singer, a great front man. You want to stand there and play guitar? I went, Johnny, Shorty Medlocke, my granddaddy once told me that if you can't ride in the back seat of a Cadillac, you'll never ride in the front. I'm in the back seat. Let's go. You know?
Love it.
And there it was, you know? And ever since then, I've never regretted ever making that decision. I love being in the band. Those guys are my family. I mean, they're my band family. I have my own personal family, but those guys are my band family. And the funny part about this all is, on or about the 10th anniversary I was in the band, we're out playing somewhere. And I climb up on the bus, and the road manager goes, Rickey, there's Gary got you something. He is there on the counter in the kitchen on the bus. I went and looked, and it was $1.50 wrapped up in a Snickers bar.
So he did give you the $1.50 in the Snickers.
And I told him, I said, you know, I was wondering when you was ever going to give me my $1.50 in my Snickers bar.
Way back in the day, when you guys, before you were Lynyrd Skynyrd, that is Lynyrd Skynyrd, a household name, you guys opened for Kiss. How was that?
Well, I opened for, this is funny that you're asking me this. You know, Skynyrd, when I was in the band, we opened for quite a few big name acts. We opened for Rod Stewart and the Faces. We opened for Mountain. We opened for Cactus, Wishbone Ash. We opened for, oh my God, man. We opened for so many people in Jacksonville. It was wild. But I had already left Skynyrd when they opened for Kiss. But I opened for Kiss with the Blackfoot guys.
Okay.
We had our first record out called No Reservations. And I got to tell you, the first night we stepped out on stage was kind of, it was like an LSD trip. I mean, back then is when all their hordes of fans came painted just like them. Most of the crowd was painted like Gene or Paul or, you know, all of them. And man, I stepped out on the stage and we went to playing, and I'm looking at Kiss in the audience. You know what I mean? And it was the strangest, absolute strangest thing. One of the strangest things I'd ever been through. It really was.
How will you look back on your career?
Oh, well, you know what? I really feel, you know, I'm 71 years old now, you know. Thank God, still got my hair.
You don't look 71.
And, you know, I look back on it now. I've been very blessed and very fortunate to have played with some of the world's finest musicians. You know, I've been on stage jamming with some of the finest musicians in the world. I've been able to call some incredible guys and gals my friends, my family. And I feel like honestly, this is what I was meant to do. I'll tell you something that's really incredible. When my grandfather came out to see me after the Strikes album came out, and we had a hit with Highway Song and Train Train. He wrote Train Train back in the day, and we made it a rock song, and the rest is history. Mm-hmm. He came out and he saw me as a front man, as a singer, as a guitar player. And I'll never forget when I came off the stage, pulled me aside and he said, I want to tell you something. He said, when you come out of your mother's womb, God gave you an extra special kiss. And I'll never forget that. That's something that has lasted with me, has stayed with me my whole life, And I really feel very blessed and very fortunate because I was able to do it with two of the greatest Southern rock bands that ever lived. And you know what? Some people never get the chance to have one band with success. And I just think that it was meant for me to be here, meant for me to do this, destiny, fate. It was meant for me to be talking to you today. And I don't know, man, I love fans the world over. Here recently I started doing, I'm on this thing called Cameo.
Oh, yeah.
And where you can buy a message from artists and everything. And I have a blast with those because, you're supposed to do a minute, Well, man, I go on there and make sure I do 2.5, 3, 4 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because I'm giving this personal message to somebody's mom or somebody's sister. And I want it to last forever with them. You know what I mean? I want them to be able to look back on it, play it forever, play it for their family and their friends and whoever else. You know what I'm saying? So when we used to, now that the COVID-19 thing is, I don't know, whatever that was about. My jury within me is still out on that. But, I hate it because we used to do these really cool meet and greets. Mm-hmm. 40ers say hello to us, the whole bit. And now, because of the COVID-19 bullshit or whatever, now we can't do that anymore.
Yep.
We can't shake their hand and we can't say, hey, I hope you have a great time tonight and hope you enjoy the show or so forth and so on. We can't do it anymore. You know what I mean? and what's really weird to me is when you look at your career and you think that all of a sudden you're going along and you're playing music and everything is going right. And the next thing you know, you're shut down. All of a sudden, it's like the rug pulled out under our feet. Music industry, the entertainment industry was the first industry to shut down. And now it's the last to open up,
Yep.
And it hurt people. It devastated a lot of crew. There's all these guys that live with us that make sure that we're able to perform for people and all that stuff. It was devastating to some of them. And, whoever was responsible, and I got my own ideas about that, being an Indian, you know what I mean? Chingle, chingle. I tell you what, whoever was responsible for that, you'll get yours one day.
Karma is a bitch.
It's coming. Karma is a bitch.
Yes.
Payback is a mofo.
It is. I tell you what, I have enjoyed our time here. I'm looking forward to seeing the band. I live in Vegas. You guys are going to be in October, about an hour away from me in Laughlin. I'm coming down to see you guys perform.
Man, you need to come and say hello to me.
I will. Definitely will. For sure.
Please do, man. All you got to do is reach out to my reach out to the publicist and make sure that I know, and I will personally leave you some tickets to come say hey. All right?
I agree. I love that. And thank you for being on the show. This has been fun. I mean, Rickey, you're a great dude. You are an icon to the music industry, let alone rock and roll. And I just want to say thank you for everything you have done in your career for music. Thank you for standing up to your heritage. I respect you 100%.
Well, I appreciate it, my brother. And you take good care. And listen, I hope to you, everybody out there.
Do something for me and join the Patreon group. Go to patreon.com/beforethelights. There's 5 more minutes of this interview that you're going to want to check out. You can only get it at patreon.com/beforethelights. Follow us on Instagram at Before the Lights Podcast. Thank you for listening to Before the Lights. I'm Tommy Canale. And until next time, everybody, a salute, a chin chin.